It's a real honor to have you here in Mexico.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And you have many skills. We will tell about that later. What is the purpose of your visit to Mexico? What are your plans regarding our country?
So I actually was invited by the Kababi family to develop a cooperation with them regarding a new site that we have launched, which is called Catalyst Investors Club.
Wow.
And we want to offer the Mexican investment community to look at Israeli companies, startup companies via this site, and to decide whether or not they want to invest. They have now there is 150 Israeli company on the site, and we hope that this site will motivate some Mexican investor to look at what's going on in Israel, and eventually they may invest in Israeli companies.
And in addition to the economic skills, you were an IDF spokesperson. First of all, let's talk about the threat of a direct attack of Iran on Israel. That is very important now. How serious is it, and how do you think Israel is ready for it in current circumstances?
First, we see that Iran is very serious about attacking Israel, because in the last 6 months we've been attacked by the proxies of Iran. Obviously, the Hamas that has been supplied all the military equipment by Iran. They've been trained by Iran. We have also a lot of attack from the north, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and also Syria. And we see the attack going on with the support of Iran from the beginning of this conflict. So the fact that Iran wants to, or claim that they will try to attack us directly, it's not really a surprise to us, but Israel has been facing the Iranian threat for the last 6 months quite successfully. We have a big challenge right now because we are different fronts right now that we're facing. We are also very worried because it has been more than 6 months that the hostages are still in captivity with the Hamas. So this is our main concern. But I do believe that Israel has the infrastructure to defend itself even against Iranian attacks.
With so many fronts?
Yes, I think fortunately we have in Israel also defense capability, but also attack capabilities. Regarding the Iron Dome, it has been supplying a very strong defense for the Israeli population from the beginning. The Iron Dome is now very efficient in all the fronts. So if you look at what happened since October 7th, really the population that was hurt de facto was the army. It was not the civilian population massively, okay, even from the northern attacks. So I think that we have this capability to defend ourselves, and we're quite a strong nation, I have no doubt.
Because do you think Iran will take the risk because the conflict may grow? United States said.
Yeah, I think that Iran has been attacked indirectly. I think it would be a big mistake for Iran to attack directly. That's why I mentioned also our attack capabilities. Iran has also developed nuclear capabilities that are very dangerous, not only for Israel, but for the whole region and for the world. So I think that one day Israel has to treat the problem at its source, which is Iran, instead of fighting exclusively the proxies of Iran.
Do you think they have the bomb?
They don't have it yet, but they are close to that level of capability that could be a threat in the region and for the world. And I think that's something that is inadmissible. I hope that we will get the support of the nation in the world to support the effort that is currently led by Israel to really block these capabilities that are really dangerous for our region. We have seen what they've been able to do with their proxies, especially during October 7th. We understand that this is a regime that is dangerous for any, democracy or any people in the world that want to avoid to be under the threat of this regime that is barbarian regime that is hurting his own population and the women in Iran, as well as every civilized society. They're attacking it as a big Satan, and not only Israel.
Sure. You were a reserve officer in the IDF negotiation unit in crisis situation and hostage situation. What is your opinion of the way the latest hostage crises have been handled? What would you have done? Have you been in charge?
No, I've not been in charge because I left the unit a few years ago. But when we were approached a few years ago regarding the release of Gilad Shalit, and more than 1,000 terrorists were liberated, including the Sinwar that is currently leading Hamas today, our advice was not to release the terrorists. But the situation is different.
Yes.
The situation is different because first it was one soldier, and it was a soldier that was in action. Here it was civilian people that were kidnapped and taken hostages. And this is unbearable, the type of torture they are going through, the rape for the women. That's something that is unbearable. So we need to do the utmost to reach an agreement, even if we have to pay a very heavy price to release the hostages. I think that the whole nation is in favor of an agreement, and my concern is not the willingness of Israel and the action taken by the negotiator, which I think are doing a good job. If you look at the first agreement that was achieved, to be frank, it was a good agreement, in terms of the release of the hostages that were reached. My concern is Sinwar. He wants to die as a shaheed. He doesn't care about his population. From his standpoint, if you have 100,000 people that are killed, for him it's 100,000 shaheeds, martyr, and therefore is very dangerous not only for Israel but also for the Palestinian people that are suffering from the leadership of Sinwar. So that's my concern. I think that every time even the Hamas representative are indicating that they are ready for an agreement, goes back to Sinwar after 3 days, and Sinwar give a negative answer. He has, it's a guy that is his vision is very different to the vision of people that have a certain rationale. They use the civilian population as a human shield. During the whole conflict, he doesn't care if the Gaza Strip is destroyed. He wants one thing, the destruction of the state of Israel, and he wants the whole region to become under their control. And that's our key problem. It's not a question of willingness of the Israeli leaders or willingness of the negotiator. That's our key problem right now.
Yes, because I was wondering, is Hamas committing suicide? Because it was a suicidal attack on October 7th. Is Hamas committing suicide for the day after Fatah takes over the Gaza Strip? It is strange.
No, I think that from their standpoint, there is no way that the Fatah will take over. They want to keep the control over the Gaza Strip, the Hamas, but they want also to take control over the West Bank. This is their goal. So there is no way they want the Fatah to lead the Palestinian people. There is an ideology behind the Hamas. And it's very different to the ideology of, I believe, most of the Palestinians. It's not in the interest of most of the Palestinians. Even though, unfortunately, if you look at the survey, the Hamas get quite a lot of support.
Yes, and more now.
That's very concerning for me, but I think that there is no alternative. It's not a free speech, If you have a choice between the Hamas and the Fatah, it's not really a pure democracy. There has not been any election for the last 10 years.
They are not very different.
We've pulled out from Gaza in 2005. The last time there was election, it was in 2007. From that day, the Hamas took control. They killed the people of the Fatah that were in Gaza. There were more than 2,000 people that were killed by the Hamas from the Fatah. And there was no election since then. So the population has no real choice.
Of course. Do you think a hostage deal is still possible?
From our standpoint, yes. From the American standpoint, obviously, yes. Whether Sinoir wants a deal, I'm not sure, to be frank. You know, if you look at, he had so many opportunities to reach a deal, and every time he rejected the deal.
And since you are into technology, what happened to the technology of the Israel-Gaza border fence that was supposed to shield Israel from all attacks? Is it that technology is no longer sufficient, or and did the failure of the fence affect the trust people have in Israeli technology?
I think technology is useful, but it has to be managed, and it was poorly managed. I think that we have an amazing technology with the Iron Dome. We had a lot of information that we gathered, including by the woman that served in the frontier, that transferred information, but it was not properly processed. The wrong decisions were taken. I think some of the decisions were done at the political level that were wrong. I think, wrong decision that was done was to believe that the Hamas is afraid of an attack from Israel and they want peace. That was a wrong assumption. And when the political leaders are giving that signal, it doesn't matter what information the army provides. It's not the decision of supporting the Hamas, in my view, was the wrong decision taken by the government. Enabling to transfer money, knowing that this money finance the infrastructure of the Hamas, the tunnel, was a big mistake. And obviously, when we had signals, the information was not processed properly.
Of course. Now, what is the economic situation in Israel at 6 months of a war that has no date of ending?
So, fortunately, the economic situation in Israel is pretty strong, and mostly due to the fact that if you look at the growth engine of the Israeli economy, it has been for the last 20 years the high tech. And if you look at high-tech companies, for example, in our portfolio, you have more than 99% of the sales of our portfolio companies that is done overseas. It's not depending on the local Israeli market. The investment has been reduced in the high-tech industry in the last 2 years, but it's still quite big. In 2021, we had a peak of $25 billion invested by the venture industry in the high-tech sector. And there have been more than 89 unicorns that were created. If you compare it, for example, to the EU, Europe, there are more unicorns in Israel than in the EU put together. And there is more money invested still today in the high-tech sector than the money invested in the European community put together. So the high-tech is quite strong. There are sectors where we are still dominant, for example, in the field of cybersecurity, in AI, in life science. We are fortunate that we've been exposed to very impressive companies in the last 30 years where we've been investing in the high-tech sector. We were lucky to be the only venture fund to invest in Mobileye, which is a huge success story, and that was sold to Intel for $20 billion.
Amazing.
And we invested also quite a lot in cyber and other sectors, and we see there are very good opportunities today. So the price went down, it's true. We find it more attractive, the value are much more reasonable than maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So we find it's a time where people should be bullish regarding Israel. You know, I've learned that the best timing to invest is when the cannons are doing a lot of noise. So that's the time I would suggest to the international investor community to look at Israel. It's also a way to support the Israeli economy. But I think that there is a demand for technology all over the world, and Israel is well positioned to supply disruptive technology that will change many industries.
That was the former question. Do they still trust the Israeli technology after?
I mean, the technology is applied to so many sectors. Very little of the high-tech industry is mostly focused on civilian application. Okay, the part which relates to the military is a small part. Mobileye is actually a good example because what Mobileye has developed, they develop a technology for the car industry. It's a camera in the car. 70% of the automotive companies are using Mobileye in order to avoid a collision, to give an alert for the driver. And the camera is a very cheap camera. When we invested in Mobileye, there were many competitors, 7 competitors at the time, but they were the only one that could identify pedestrian. And this is a technology that was initially used in the army, developed in the army. With the leadership of Professor Amnon Shashua, they have used AI to apply it for the automotive industry. There were 300 people in Jerusalem that were, most of them working in a special military unit, but they were focusing on the civilian application. And fortunately, this company became world leader. And now we see that in a country where there was no automotive, we became a nation where there is a lot of technology related to automotive.
And what is your newest, let's say, product?
I mean, we invest quite intensively into the high-tech industry. For example, if we speak about automotive, we recently invested in a company that is complementary to Mobileye, which developed a very attractive and cheap radar that is complementary to Mobileye. Because if you want to provide autonomous driving capability, you need a certain source of information, not only the camera of Mobileye, but radar. So we invest in an Arbe, which is a publicly traded company. We invest also in the auto tech in a company called Adionics, which is improving the performance of the battery. So instead of driving, let's say, 400 kilometers, you will be able to drive with the same battery manufacturer 600 kilometers. So this is a technology coming from Israel, and we are now building a production site in the US. We have invested also recently in biotech companies, and a company that I think has a good potential in Mexico, which is called CuraLife, which enabled to reduce the level of sugar in the blood for people using this product for diabetes. Instead of using insulin, using CuraLife would enable you to have a reduced level of sugar and hopefully to stop using insulin. So that's a product that I think has a huge success.
How does it lower the level of sugar?
So you can see online the product CuraLife. You'll see that people that have diabetes, they have to check their the blood level, the level of sugar in the blood. So you see immediately the impact. It's only based on natural ingredient, but this company has done clinical trials to show how it impacts their for diabetes patient the level of sugar in their blood. So it's quite efficient. I know in Mexico there is a big community of people suffering from diabetes, so I think it could be very relevant. That's one of the examples of the companies that have a huge potential in Mexico. We also invested recently in a company in cybersecurity, a company called Otorio, which is doing cyber solution for manufacturing site. So that's a very strong technology company, and we like to invest in cyber. We did that in the past. And now what is new is that all those opportunities will be shown via this platform. So any person, individual, they don't need to be a specialized venture fund like us to get access to the deal flow. Just by looking at the opportunities via the site that we've launched, catalyst-ic.com. It's an investors club of Catalyst, which enable any person that is accredited investor to get access to this deal flow.
Wow, this is a revolution. And how was the impact of the war on the Latin American investors?
I mean, we don't see so much Latin American investors up to now investing in Israel.
Up to now.
Because, maybe some of them were used to invest in bonds in Israel, but I think the way of tomorrow is to invest directly in technology companies, because that's the future of Israel. there is always an overwhelming demand for bonds, for Israeli bonds. The economy is pretty strong. You have, for example, if you look at the debt versus the GDP, the debt represents only 65% of the GDP, which is much lower than what you can see in any OECD country, on the average of the OECD country. So I think that if investors want to really enjoy the success story of Israel, the best way to do it is to invest in those technology companies, and I think that that's for us what we want really to develop in the coming years is to create here an office to promote via Catalyst Investors Club investment in the Israeli market to the Latin American market. That's our objective. We've done that by opening offices in the past in Europe. We've done that opening offices in China. Now we really want to address the Latin American market.
From Mexico.
Yes.
And what are the sectors that you recommend investing now that it's a moment?
You know, as I said, the best way is maybe to follow the type of investment we've made. We like very much auto tech because this is something that is really very much growing in Israel. But we are very active in AI technology. There is a lot of know-how in Israel in this industry. We are also quite active in cybersecurity, but also in life science. We have an investment bank, which is the largest investment bank in Israel today. We raised over $10 billion for Israeli companies all over the world. And we have a strong team in life science, in medical device, in biotech, that are helping Israeli companies to raise money in those sectors. So those are the sectors I would say that are interesting. Obviously, I think you have to look at technology related to agrotech, food tech. Those are sectors that are interesting. They are maybe less popular than 2 years ago, but they're still very interesting companies in that sector.
And now let's talk about your company, Dory Media, and what you are doing with La Lola and Rebelde.
You know, it's funny because people don't know, but it's an Israeli company that produced La Lola. The first, I think, program was 20 years ago. We have a big library of content produced in Argentina originally. And we have done a remake of those programs that were very successful in Mexico. So we are happy that even a media company such as Dory is producing content in Spanish, and that is really distributed all over the Latin American countries.
Amazing. So we are going to watch this also. And now the last to close the interview, let's talk about your family. I know you have kids in the army at the moment on the front, and can you tell us a little bit? And I know about one of your kids, which is a tennis champion.
Yeah. So I have two kids that serve in the army. One is still in Gaza. He's serving as a commanding officer of a special commando unit, and has been almost 6 months since October 7 in Gaza. The second one was Michael, who was only 4.5 months, and then he was also commander of a special unit, and he was released from Miluim, from reserve duty. Unfortunately, he may go back in the coming weeks. My older son, Daniel, is a tennis champion that you mentioned. He just played and won a tournament in Brazil last week. So now he's resting. He's also representing Israel in the Davis Cup. So they won recently Japan. Unfortunately, they lost against the Czech Republic, but were very proud that they won also against Turkey and other countries. And he has been playing the singles and the doubles. He was also national champion in the US college. So I'm very proud of the kids. It's weird for me that the first time there is a conflict and I'm not serving, it's very hard for me to see my kids serving in the army while I'm a spectator and not actively involved in that conflict.
Yes, and let's finish by talking about your father.
Yeah.
Your father that was the president of CRIF.
My father was the head of the Jewish community in France for 9 years. Before he was the CEO of the Rothschild Bank in Paris, and he was chairman of the bank also in Israel. And he's now on the board of our venture capital and our investment banking activity in Israel, so he comes quite often to Israel. But I think what he's the most proud of is that all his grandkids are all living in Israel. That's something he's very proud of.
And he also lives in Italy?
No, he lives still in France with my mom. She's Israeli, my father is French. But they are coming very often because they have to see their grandkids in Israel, so they come very often.
So thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.